Good morning, my friend. Hope you're doing well. It's going to be a beautiful spring day here in Nebraska. The grass is growing and flowers are starting to bloom and the trees are starting to grow and with new little buds and pretty flowers. And it's just going to be an incredible day here. And we're finally having springtime and we're very excited about that. It's going to be time to plant the garden and all those things that Lisa loves to do here soon. And it's been kind of a strange week. We've had a lot going on and some unexpected things and some visits from friends from around the world, as I told you yesterday. And we're going to have a lot more to talk about with Hank-Jan and Covert's visit soon. Send a shout out to the Netherlands in general. We got several people in the Netherlands who listen to the podcast, not just Hank-Jan. But Mike is another friend, old friend, haven't seen since probably 2012 or so, and just got an email from him, and he's listening out there in the Netherlands. So, Mike, shout out to you. We're praying for you. Hope that things are going well for you. And, friend, listen, whatever you're going through today, if you had a hard day yesterday, if something difficult is happening in your life, if you're reeling from grief or loss or pain, or if you're just having the best time of your life right now, whatever it is, just remember that Paul told us in Acts that God planned before the creation of the world the exact times and places that people would live their lives. And he says it's not an accident when you end up where you are. That doesn't mean that the bad things that happen are on purpose. They're not. They're all the result of a fallen world. But it does mean that God's got his eye on you. He's got a plan for you. And he's not giving up on you no matter what's going on. And if you're having a rough time, just remember, he said he planned the exact times and places where you would be so that you would search for him and perhaps find him, though he is not far from any one of us. So God's there. He's right there. Whatever you're going through, he will be there for you. Psalm 34:18 says, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Isaiah says the Lord longs to be gracious to you. He rises to show you compassion. So friend, he's there. He's there no matter what you're going through. Listen, we had a rough day yesterday. Harvey got hurt again. He can't walk on his front leg. We had to take him to the vet, and he had to spend the night. So Dr. Susan's taking care of him overnight. Shout out to Susan, our amazing vet. If you're in the North Platte, Nebraska area, Susan Sokloka is an amazing human being, great veterinarian, and she's taking good care of Harvey. But Harvey and Lewis, of course, were litter mates, and they've been brothers since the womb, and they've only spent one night apart since they were born until last night. And Lewis does not tolerate change very well. So he had a rough time. He was searching. He was going to all the places on the property where Harvey likes to hang out. He was looking for his brother, and he just was almost inconsolable last night. So rough night for us with Lewis, and so pray for Lewis and Harvey. Harvey will be okay, but it looks like he got into another raccoon or something. He's got a wound on his leg, and going to be a weekend of medicine and bandaging and dealing with Harvey hurt. So just pray for Harvey if you have a moment. But anyway, I got an email yesterday, or a text message actually, from my editor at Waterbrook Penguin Random House, Susan Jaden, the other Susan in our world. And Susan said the book, my new book, Hope is the First Dose, is getting ready to go into the editing phase. And so that reminded me of an episode I did a while back called Edits and Second Drafts. And it's just about the time that you need to take in your life sometimes to sit down and do some edits, to look at things clearly with an editor's eye and say, what can be tightened up? What can be fixed? How can I rewrite this story so that it really gets crystal clear on where it needs to go? And sometimes, friend, there's changes that need to be made in our lives. Sometimes we need to make some tough decisions and cut some things out or add some things or tighten some things up or get rid of a part of the story that we thought was going one direction and it's not. And that's what edits are all about. And I can tell you as a writer, it's never fun when you work really hard and you pour your heart out and you write something that you think is perfect, and then the editor comes along and says, you know what, that chapter 9 that you wrote just doesn't need to be in the book at all. It doesn't add anything. It's holding you back. Or that whole section right there contains a lot of grammar, a lot of problems, and you didn't close this loop. And it's kind of offensive almost at first when somebody edits your work. But the point is, though, if you can zoom out a little bit and get past the emotional part of it, the editor's eye is always on the goal of making the finished product as good as it can possibly be and as close to what your potential is as a writer. And so this episode that I'm about to play for you again is all about going through edits and second drafts. And I remember when we're dealing with older episodes, sometimes there might be a link or something in there that doesn't work anymore. Forgive me for that. And also, you'll hear me talk about what I was working on with this new book. I originally was going to call it Infinitely Happier. And like many things in life, what you think of and dream of and plan for at the start doesn't always turn out to be where it lands. And then the book kind of takes its own path as you write it. And that's how our lives work too. So the book is now called Hope is the First Dose. That may or may not be the final title when it finally comes out. But I'm getting ready to go back into that season of editing and redrafting and fixing and repairing and working with Susan and the content folks at Penguin Random House to get things as good as they can be, so that when this book lands in your hands, it's going to help you the best way that it possibly can. And so don't be afraid of edits. Don't be afraid of second drafts. Don't be afraid to dig in and cut out. The writers say, kill your darlings. Like, find some of those things in your story that you feel like you really need to hold on to, but maybe they're actually holding you back. Maybe they're actually keeping you from telling the story in the best way that you can. So here's edits and second drafts. Friends, I'm praying for you. Don't forget wle1md.com/prayer. It's a great place to go to connect with people all over the world, to pray with and for each other and just really help bear each other's burdens. And if you're dealing with something, put it out there on the prayer wall. You can put it anonymously. You can put it just for me and Lisa and Tata, or you can put your name on it. And folks, you'll get an email every time somebody prays for you. They'll let you know. And just a word about the prayer wall. It takes a little while for a prayer request to show up on the wall because we moderate those. It's funny when you put something out there in the world, weird things happen. So we get some robots and some weird people that put some things on the prayer wall that are inappropriate. So we've chosen to moderate every one of them. So when you put a prayer request up, it comes to us first in the form of an email. And well, guess what? We're all working. So it takes a little bit of time for us to check those and make sure they're appropriate for public display. And so please don't re-enter the prayer request multiple times with a lot of people, because it doesn't pop up immediately. They'll just keep entering it over and over. And the problem with that is that we have to go through and read each one of those and make sure that you didn't add something, or that they don't both need to be posted. And we end up having to delete all those duplicates and stuff. So just be a little bit patient and post the prayer request once and wait for it to show up. It will. If it doesn't show up in, say, 24 hours or so, then maybe re-enter it or email me and let me know that we missed something. But we're working hard to get that in faster turnaround time. But those prayer requests do have to be moderated. So just keep that in mind. Also, wle1md.com/newsletter is the place to go for this community connecting. And every week my newsletter is kind of my best prescriptions for that week for how you can change your mind and change your life. And I'm excited about the new book. I'm excited about the editing process. It's always fun. It's hard work. It's sometimes painful. But pray about that this book will come into the best shape possible for it to help the most people possible all over the world. Again, shout out to my friends in the Netherlands. Mike, hope you're having an amazing day. And friend, we are praying for you and with you. And here's edits and second drafts, unchanged from its original form. And all you need to do is start today. Good morning, my friend. It is dark 30 here in Nebraska on the river. Early on a Sunday morning. Hope you're doing well today. Want to remind you, as I told you last week, we have the 100th episode of the podcast coming up in a couple of weeks. And I would love to make that a special episode, and in doing so, would love to hear from you. If you could send me a little recording, tell me who you are, where you're from, and what the podcast means to you, or even just something in writing. Lee at drleewarren.com is the email address. Send me an email with the subject 100th episode and tell me what you think, either in recording, which would be great because I can include your voice like this.
Hello, my name's Eli Covert. I'm 8 years old, and I like listening to Joshua Warren's podcast because it helps people, and it makes me feel better. And I like when he talks about God. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Eli, of course, our friend from Wyoming, who's now 9 years old. But that's a perfect testimonial. If you have something you would like to say to include on the 100th episode, I'd love to hear from you. We got a wonderful email this week from a woman named Lola. She actually wrote to Lisa. Lisa at lisawarren.com is her email address, and she loves to hear from you too. But Lola wrote Lisa an email, and in the email she said the words "our community" twice, and she was referring to this community of people that listen to the podcast and read the newsletter and do the Zoom calls together. It's become part of her family, part of her world, and that's exactly what we're here for. This is a community, and it's amazing. You need to be involved in community, friend. We've heard lots from a lot of people this past week. There's lots of people struggling, a lot of people hurting, a lot of people wanting to share things they're praying about, and people praying for us. And it's just a wonderful reminder of why Hebrews 10:25 says, don't get out of the habit of assembling together. Don't forget how important it is to be in community. And of course, the context there, he's talking about church. And he's right, but starting in verse 23, he says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day approaching. So this is a really important reminder. Church is important, not just for preaching and singing and taking communion and getting baptized and all those things, but also because you need to be in community with other people. This community of the newsletter, the podcast, all of that is great. It's not a substitute for you being in real life community with people in your area. You need somebody who will miss you when you're not there. You need somebody who will call you and check on you. You need to get in church, friend. You need to be in community. It will help you in your life more than just about anything I can imagine. This was kind of a tough week. We had, Lisa and I, a personal situation that kind of caught us off guard, and some big changes to some plans we've been making are going to be necessary because some other people made some decisions differently than we thought we had agreed on, and it just kind of shook us up a little bit, and both of us had to spend a few days, not doing self-brain surgery, kind of forgot, even in our own lives, and got kind of frustrated and sort of grumpy and down in the dumps about this thing. And then we both reminded each other that we need to continue to focus on positive. And even me, the guy who's always telling you to change your mind about things, it took me a couple of days to sort of get my head straight about what we're going to do now and what we're going to do next. And so it's just a good reminder that everybody has to focus on always starting today, always taking control of your thoughts, always focusing on the positive, because life's always out there lurking to throw you a curveball. And if you're not ready, you don't respond properly, you can really get yourself pretty negative. And nobody has time for that. We don't want you to be focused on the negative. There's too much hard stuff in life. You need to be able to find that way to grab hope, reframe, reset, get your mind right, and change your mind and change your life, because you can control the 6 inches between your ears. And it was a good reminder to me this week that even me, Mr. Positive, sometimes have to kind of step back and reframe my thinking. And so the other thing that happened this week is I heard from my agent, Kathy Helmers, an amazing lady, and she kind of gave me a gentle nudge that she needs a book from me. I've been telling you, I've been a little stuck, a little procrastinating on writing Infinitely Happier and getting it done. So today we're going to talk about writing, a little bit about how edits and second and first drafts come together, because my agent's after me. It's time to stop talking about writing. It's time to start writing. And as always, my friend, it is time to start today. Hey, I'm so glad to have you listening. I'm Dr. Lee Warren. I live in Nebraska, in the United States of America, with my incredible wife, Lisa Warren. I'm a neurosurgeon and an author, and I'm here to help you harness neuroscience, the power of your brain, faith, the power of your spirit, and good old common sense to help you lead a healthier, better, happier life. Listen, friend, you can't change your life until you change your mind, and I'm here to help you learn the art of self-brain surgery to get that done. You can get the show notes and more on my website at wleewarrenmd.com. And if you like the show, please subscribe to my newsletter, wleewarrenmd.com/newsletter, so you never miss anything, and get in this community. It's here to help you change your mind and change your life. I'm Dr. Lee Warren. Let's get after it. All right. Well, like I told you, I've been a little procrastinating lately, a little bit trying to get started on my new book, and got a lot written in terms of the first draft, but it's really down to that time when I've got to make some critical decisions about how the story's going to lay out. And there's always some work that goes into not just the words that you write, but the form and the craft, the shape that the book's going to take and how it's going to lay out. And this is a different kind of project for me, because I've typically written memoir, narrative, kind of sort of nonfiction narrative storytelling type memoir, where I tell stories, but it's truth. And this book's going to be a little different because it's more of a personal development, quote unquote self-help type book. And so there's been a lot of kind of thinking Lisa and I've done about how this book is going to shape up. And now it's time to stop thinking and start writing, and really get it done. And so I've been thinking a lot about that process. And I have an editor, a professional editor, Dave Lambert, that I use, who helps me kind of get the book sort of as good as it can be. And the thing about having an editor is that editor never thinks a book is as ready to publish as you are. So it's very helpful to have a good editor who will always tell you the truth. When you first start writing, you're not always sure where you're going. And the first draft can be kind of wild and incomplete. It doesn't always make sense. And it's really hard to see that, though, when you've spent so much time working on it, because you're kind of too close to your own material. You grow attached to some of the points that you're trying to make and fall in love with some of the characters in your story, and you think you know the best way to craft your plot and your theme of your own book. The problem is, though, most first drafts end up being a lot different from the published version of the book, because without some good editing, the book never comes close to being as good as it could really be. And that's why we have editors. We have people like Dave out there who can see the places in your story that need help to reach their maximum potential. Now, working on my book has made me realize something, and I thought about you as I realized it, because I wanted you to understand how much writing a book is like living your life. When we first start out, we're not always sure where we're going. And some of us, our early years are wild, we're immature, and the things we do don't always make a lot of sense. And it's hard to see it because most of us lack insight when it comes to evaluating our own lives. We're too close to it. We grow attached to some of the things that we like to do. We fall in love with some of the characters in our own lives, and we think we know the best way to craft what our lives are about. But remember what I said earlier, most first drafts end up being a lot different from the published version, because without some editing, a book never comes close to being as good as it can be. And friend, the whole point of what I'm telling you right now is that same thing is true in your life. If you don't make some changes as we go, if we don't get some edits, our life story will never be everything it could be. Now, we've all read books where we got to the end and said, that didn't really make sense to me. I wasn't sure what that was about. The main character wasn't very well developed. Blah, blah, blah. It's sad to me, though, because I know how hard it is to write a book, how much you put of yourself into it. And it's sad when I see one, and I get to the end of a book, and it could have been so much better with just a little bit of editing. One interesting thing that happens to you when you write and you put yourself out there is a lot of people start writing you and sending you their books to look at. And one of the consistent things that I see in amateurs, like I have been, who are writing a book for the first time, is that they don't have an editor, and it really shows. Like when you put your book out there and it's not been professionally edited, it's never as good as it could be. But it's even sadder to me when I see a life like that. When I was a beginning writer, I made a lot of mistakes that were really about not understanding the craft of writing well enough. But through hard work and study, and good people like Kathy and Dave helping me, I'm learning to get rid of a lot of those mistakes without my editor having to tell me. I'm making fewer mistakes. My edits take a shorter amount of time now. It costs me less money to have the books edited because I'm better with the first draft. I'm maturing as a writer, and my work is getting better as a result of that. And 1 Corinthians 13:11 says that the same thing should happen in our lives. Here's what Paul said. When I was a child, I spoke, thought, and reasoned in childlike ways, as we all do. But when I became a man, I left my childish ways behind. Now, when I send off a manuscript to Dave and he sends me back a round of edits, he often writes things in the margins. And he'll say things like, hey, you need to get rid of this scene, or you need to get rid of that character. And I'm always a little bit offended because I thought they were pretty good. And there's a phrase in writing called kill your darlings. And it basically means that there are some things that you fall in love with in your own story, but when somebody else reads them, they either hurt the story or they don't add anything of value. They're darling to you, but they're not helping the story move along. And it's hard for you as a writer to get rid of a scene or a character that you've created because you're fond of it. But if you really want your book or your story to be as good or as good as it can possibly be, you have to listen to your editor, and you have to be willing to kill your darlings by chopping them out of your story. The Apostle Paul said the same thing in 1 Corinthians 15:33, but don't be so naive. There's another way of saying, you know well, bad company corrupts good habits. Don't be so naive. There's another saying that you know well, bad company corrupts good habits. Paul's saying, kill your darlings. There's some people in your life. There's some things in your life. There's some habits. There's some ways that you spend time. There's some things that you're involved in that you might be fond of, but they are not helping you tell the story that your life needs to tell. Get rid of them. Some of the characters, people, for example, in our lives, don't add anything of value. Some of them actually hurt our story. Part of growing up and becoming a mature adult who lives a good story is learning to be careful who we spend time with, learning to be careful what we put in our bodies, learning to be careful how we spend our time. In the process of editing our stories, we also go through a lot of hardship. In writing, it's the grueling path of being honest and transparent so that our readers can learn as much as they can from us. But in life, it's going through trials and pain so we can help others through their hard times. And writers want their stories to be as complete and perfect as they can be, and the editing process ends up being worth it. James 1:4, for example, says the trials of life are worth it too. He says this, and true patience brought on by endurance will equip you to journey the long journey, to complete the long journey and cross the finish line mature, complete, and wanting nothing. Now, fortunately, book editing doesn't take forever. A few more revisions and my book, Infinitely Happier, will be done. It'll be ready to publish. But if I wasn't willing to let Dave or Kathy or Lisa read it and make edits and help me, suggest places where it could be tighter, if I wasn't willing to do that, then it is very unlikely that my book would ever be published, because a publisher doesn't have a personal relationship with you, and they will evaluate the story on its own merits and won't be publishing it because they like me. They'll be publishing it or not publishing it because they think it is a story that either is or is not worthy of anyone reading. And I don't want that to be true of my life. I don't want my life to be a story that wasn't worth publishing. And I don't want it for you either. Does your life need some editing? Are there some darlings that you need to eliminate from your story? Look, second drafts are supposed to be better than the first ones. If I sent Dave a second draft that was worse than the first one, it would be not a good use of his time or mine. It's just part of the deal, though, that second drafts are supposed to be better, and nobody feels bad that their first draft wasn't perfect. Real writers know the first draft is never the publishable final product, so don't fret the process. If you want your life to be all that it can be, to be worthy of people telling your story to other people in future generations and saying, man, that was a great life story, then you might need some editing. Now, I've got a lot of work to do on my book and on my life. Trust me on that. And since Dave and Kathy and Lisa and you are all out there waiting on me to finish Infinitely Happier, I need to start today making that as good as it can be. Now, a great way to edit your life is to get into community. I started this podcast by saying that. I'm going to say it again as we're done. Get on the newsletter, wlee1md.com/newsletter. Get yourself in a community. Go to church. Get some people around you who will miss you if you are not there. If you're not a church person, go join a bowling league or a softball team or a support group or something, but get yourself around some other people that will help you edit your life, and your story will be better for it. Hey, there's a reader named Charles who's about to have a shoulder replacement. He writes in all the time. He's a faithful listener and reader, and I want you to pray for Charles. I promised him I would tell you to pray for him, that his shoulder surgery will go well. He'll have pain eliminated, and he'll feel better and get back into his life. Pray for Charles. He's in Texas. Pray for him. Also, thank you to everybody who sent some donations to my brother-in-law Jay's food bank. There's a guy named Steve in Temple, Texas, who wrote in to tell me that he donated to Jay's community food bank, and I hope you did too. Jay and his people are doing some great work in Minnesota, and just really proud of the work that he's doing. And thank you, Steve, and everybody who supported that work last time. Remember, the 100th episode is coming up. Send me your clips and your testimonials. I'd love to hear from you, Lee at drleewarren.com. Look, friend, there's power in community. That's how you edit your life and get your second draft better than the first and your third draft better than the second, and keep on hacking away and killing your darlings and tightening up your story and making it better and better and better by editing through community, through being willing to share. You need to get connected. You need to stay connected. You need to get in community, and you need to make your second draft better than your first. And friend, you need to start today. Hey, thanks for listening. The Dr. Lee Warren podcast is brought to you by I've Seen the End of You, a neurosurgeon's look at faith, doubt, and the things we think we know, available from Waterbrook, Penguin Random House, everywhere books are sold. And don't forget to support your local booksellers. You can subscribe to the show so you automatically get every episode. You can go to my website, wleewarrenmd.com, for more information about my letters, this show, my books, and more, and add the /newsletter, wleewarrenmd.com/newsletter, to get connected. Hey, the theme music for the show is Blue Highway by Poddington Bear. You can get it at freemusicarchive.org. And remember, you can't change your life until you change your mind. You have to start today. I'm Dr. Lee Warren. I'll talk to you soon. God bless you, friend. Have a great day.